Senator, welcome to Senate Spotlight.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today.
I'm very happy to have you. And we're going to be talking about security at the Capitol today. It's changing. So let's start at the beginning. What facilitated this change? How did we get to where we are?
Sure. Well, I think that we have been seeing an increase in political violence really over the years. A number of things have happened. We've been seeing increased threats against elected officials on all levels of government. And then, of course, I think one of the catalysts was the occurrences on June 14th. Melissa and Mark Hartman were assassinated, and of course, there was the attempted assassination of my colleague, Senator Hoffman, and his wife, Yvette. And I think that it just created a sense of urgency. All of that happened off campus, but I think it did create a sense of urgency that we really need to focus in on our security here on the complex, not just for the members and the staff, but for the thousands and thousands of visitors who come here every year, including school children.
Absolutely. So I know that part of the review process included something called the Axtel report, and I think that that's a phrase we're going to become really familiar with by the end of this session. So what is it, and what did it find?
Sure. So the Axtel report was commissioned by the DPS, and they focused really on 4 buildings for the time being. We felt that these 4 buildings were probably the highest in terms of priority, and it was the Capitol itself, the Centennial Office Building where the House is currently temporarily located, the Judicial Center, and then of course the Minnesota Senate Building. And they did a very comprehensive security assessment that included field work, walking through physical observations of the physical plant, a lot of stakeholder engagement and conversations with people who are here on the complex. And, you know, they looked at really everything. And then they came up with both a public-facing executive summary, and then there was also a confidential 400-plus page analysis that went into more detail. That is private and confidential, and that part will not be released to the public just for obvious reasons. And so that really was, I would say, the cornerstone of the work that we did on the Advisory Committee for Capital Area Security.
And your advisory committee determined that weapons screening should be the #1 initiative, right? How did you guys make that determination?
So that actually came directly from the Axtel report. It was the #1 thing, and one of the challenges that the advisory committee has had in past years is they have made recommendations that go then to the governor and to the legislature, and it hasn't been funded. And so the advisory committee adopted the recommendations by the Axtel group. And the question was asked, if there was only one thing we could do, what would be the thing that would have the biggest impact? And they were unequivocal that it was weapons screening. And of course that prevents the introduction of weapons or other dangerous or harmful items before people ever actually enter the buildings. And so, you know, that creates kind of a perimeter of safety. I think it also probably makes things a little bit easier for our Capitol security team. If people are already screened, you know, inside the building once people are in, I think it makes their job probably a little bit easier. Yeah.
Now that weapons screening was for those buildings that you mentioned. It's the perimeter of the Capitol grounds, but the Senate has taken its own steps to improve security, including banning guns in the gallery and on the floor. So talk to me about those extra steps.
Sure, and just to clarify, they're not banned on the floor. And we do, I think there are a number of members of the Senate who are permit to carry holders. I would say that for many members, after June 14th and then threats that have been received since that time, there is a vulnerability with the gallery that I think a lot of members felt. And based on that, President Champion was able to basically issue something that said we aren't going to permit guns there. The Senate has the capacity to make rules and control areas that are within our scope. So the Senate office building, our gallery, our floor, and it just was determined that in order for members to feel more comfortable being on the floor of the Senate, that people just don't need to bring guns up into the gallery.
Yeah. We know that you've mentioned there are some changes to security that the public can't know, just for those security reasons alone. And we mentioned some that they might see when they come, weapons screening at the doors and not being able to bring guns up into the gallery. What other changes might they see, or what do they need to know when they come here to the Capitol?
I think really the weapons screening is going to be the most visible thing. There are going to be single entry points on the south of the Capitol, kind of on the lower level, so it will be accessible. People will go through evolve machines, which are very similar. If anyone's been to a Twins game, they process people through those very, very quickly. If someone's flagged, they get pulled off to the side, they check them out, and then they continue their way. But you can move people through very, very quickly. The tunnel between the Capitol and the Senate office building has a machine. I checked it out today, walked over to the Capitol. It is staffed by very lovely people who are there to be friendly and helpful. People go through very easily. You just walk through, and it is a way to screen for dangerous weapons and other materials. They do have an X-ray machine, and so I think if somebody comes through, like for instance with a large bag, that would have to go through the X-ray machine. But this is the type of screening that people should be used to at this point. You go to see a play, you're going to go through some kind of screening. You go to a Twins game, you're going to go through screening. And this is just a way, again, to ensure the safety of everybody who comes to our Capitol.
Sure. So we've talked about how this is for the safety of visitors and staff, everybody that comes to the Capitol, which is something that people can get behind. But there has been some pushback and some unease with some of the proposed changes and the ones that have gone through. One of those arguments is that these things make the Capitol less accessible. So talk me through the considerations that you and your committee members, debated when it came to balancing security and access.
Sure. We are only one of about 10 states that did not do any screening. So we are an outlier. When you go to the U.S. Capitol, there's a rigorous screening you go through. When you go to 40 capitals around the states, around the country, you go through screening. And so I think the argument that somehow this impedes access is kind of a non-starter in terms of an argument. You will easily get through security, and once you're in, you can talk to anybody that you want to. This actually brings us into line really with the overwhelming majority of other states. And I'm of the opinion that if you are here to petition your government, I don't think you need to bring a gun to do that. We may have differing opinions about that, but again, many, many, many states screen for weapons and ban guns.
Yeah, I went to the Delaware Capitol and I've been to the Texas Capitol, and I went through screenings for both of those. If Texas can do it.
Yeah.
But that does lead us to another argument, is that there is concern about people's Second Amendment rights, their right to keep and bear arms. So how do you address those concerns?
So again, there are probably 6 states that don't have a weapons policy. And so we are, again, somewhat of an outlier. States like Tennessee, Alabama, West Virginia, I'm trying to think, Wisconsin, don't allow people to bring guns on their capitals. So this is not a blue state issue versus a red state issue. Red and blue states have decided that it is safer for everyone if people are not bringing firearms there. And I would just simply say the Supreme Court has held over and over again that there can be restrictions in sensitive areas, and government buildings, courthouses, and so forth have been determined in the past to be sensitive areas, and even the recent Bruin decision upheld that and stated that that is still the law of the land. And so people have a right to bear arms, but even Antonin Scalia said it's not an unlimited right, like most of our rights. We have a right to free speech, but it's not. There are some guardrails around that, and so this is no different.
Yeah, it's not absolute.
Correct.
Okay, well, let's talk about what happens next. Do these changes meet all of our security needs here at the Capitol, or do you think more is to come?
So our report actually had a number of categories of recommendations that have now gone to the legislature and the governor. There may be some things that will require legislative policy making. I will be introducing a bill to ban guns on the Capitol. As it stands right now, permit to carry holders will still be able to come to the Capitol with their firearms. They'll go through screening. They will have to show their permit. You can't bring long guns, and if you don't have a permit, you can't bring a gun. I just feel that we shouldn't have guns on the Capitol complex at all, and so I will be introducing that. But there are other things. There are things like more consistency in terms of staff access, badges. We now have encrypted badges. We're in the process of getting encrypted badges for everyone. But having more consistency between all of the different buildings in terms of what the badges look like and so on. So there are internal controls also once people are inside the building, visitors are inside the building. What kind of internal controls are we having? Are there places that are not accessible to the public, and how are we ensuring that? When employees leave their employment, how are we ensuring that they don't take their badge with them? I mean, so there are those sorts of things. There are technological advancements and things that we're looking at and have recommended as well. Also things like behavioral threat assessments. You know, we want people to have training so that they are observing the public as they're coming in, and maybe you know, assessing whether somebody is behaving in an unusual way that might raise some concerns. And so there are a variety of other things that really will be looked at, but not all of those things require legislative action, but they probably require money. And so this has been the other problem. The Advisory Committee on Capital Area Security has often made recommendations that have a price tag with them, and those recommendations have not been funded. So the Department of Administration, I think, is asking for about $41 million. I don't know that we have the money, but again, either we're serious about security or we're not, and so I think we have to really address those things. But DPS also has that full non-public security report, and there are things and details in there that they could look at and implement, again, that don't require approval by the legislature.
Wow. Well, a lot of things could be on the horizon. And thank you just for a great conversation, Senator. This has been great.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your interest.